This is Charlie Crockett, Texas musician and descendant of Davy Crockett, inviting you to visit the Alamo. It's not the same Alamo you, remember. There's lots of new things to experience, like the 500 artifacts inside the Alamo exhibit at the Ralston Family Collection Center, the new Mission Gate and Lunette outdoor exhibit, and Surrounded, the Alamo Augmented Experience. It's all part of an ongoing restoration and expansion that will write the Alamo's next chapter. So don't wait. Plan your visit today at thealamo.org.
Stories bigger than Texas, the Alamo podcast. The largest continuous archaeological excavation on Alamo grounds is now complete. For the past year and a half, our archaeology team has combed the earth outside the Long Barrack and discovered around 250,000 artifacts. Today, we reveal what's happening now inside the archaeology lab, the rare finds giving us a fresh glimpse at frontier life, and a sneak peek at the upcoming work to find even more unearthed history on Alamo grounds. I'm your host, Emily Baucom. We're joined by Dr. Tiffany Lindley, the Alamo's Director of Archaeology, and Kat Jenkins, one of the Alamo's staff archaeologists and a material culture specialist. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Tiffany, your team first started excavating outside the Long Barrack in October 2023. A year and a half later, the project is complete. Just how many artifacts did you find?
I think a lot of people will be surprised that we found close to 250,000 artifacts.
A 250,000.
A 250,000. Now, to be fair, not all of those artifacts are museum quality. A lot of them are very small fragments. But still, we have to process each and every one of them. They are count, they are weighed. It's a lot of work for the processing. So believe me when I say we definitely felt that 250,000.
You're pulling each and every one of those out of the ground.
Yes, everything is excavated by hand. As you know, as I've mentioned on previous podcasts, it's a very slow, very meticulous process. And we screen all of our material through a 1/4-inch screen so we don't miss anything.
The archaeologists on the team are all experts in different things. Kat, you are the expert on ceramics. What about ceramics is so important to archaeology?
Well, what I think is really important about ceramics is that they can tell us so much about a group of people or a culture just by looking at the material, the type of manufacture, and even the decoration.
Our listeners likely remember just how jazzed Tiffany gets about ceramics, and I've noticed that the public really gets excited about things that we can trace to the Battle of the Alamo, like musket balls. So I would love for both of you to explain, why are ceramics just as cool of a find as musket balls?
I will start.
Okay.
So both Kat and I love ceramics, and I think a large portion of our team also just loves ceramics because of the story that they can tell. So musket balls are fantastic. Anything from the battle is amazing. But what's great about ceramics is that it really gets to the people that were inhabiting the mission. So not just the battle period where we have ceramics from that time period as well, but the really early establishment of the mission, looking at these ceramics that people made, used, and then discarded when they, weren't useful anymore. And I love seeing like individual signatures with ceramics. That's what's really great. It's almost like a painting. Think of a painting. You have one person that their landscape is not going to look exactly the same as the person beside them if they're painting the same landscape, right? You're going to have different techniques and different stories and different signatures. And you see that in the ceramics, which is fantastic. So even though you might have the same type, they're going to be made slightly different, and you might have things like fingerprints or fingernail impressions or just irregularities that the ceramicist put into them as they were making it.
So I'm thinking about making ceramics at summer camp, and you would sign your name on it. So after it went in the kiln, you could recognize your piece from the other students. People really signed their work like that?
Not like with like an actual signature, but in the way that they are manufacturing. So think of, going back to the painting analogy, think of some of our very famous artists out there, your Picasso, Matisse, etc. And the actual style was unique to them. And so that's going to be the same as ceramics.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Tiffany. I mean, I love musket balls and I love finding them. They're still very cool. But what's unique about ceramics is the different characteristics you can see on a shirt. Like, for example, I recently just cataloged one that had a fingerprint on it. And it's really fun because you can like put your thumb on it and you see the actual indent of the thumbprint.
That was a real person.
Yes, that's such a cool feeling.
So the ceramics help you connect to the real people who lived here, worked here, walked the earth here.
Yes. And sometimes it's hard for people to separate, it's an object, but this was made by an actual person. And that's what's really cool about ceramics.
So ceramics need to get their due, is what both of you are saying.
Yes.
What are some exciting examples of ceramics you found at the Long Barrack, and what are you learning from them?
I think just the diversity of ceramics is just what's amazing about this project. We have so many different Spanish colonial ceramics, so ones that were imported from Mexico. We have indigenous made ceramic, which are called Goliadware. And it's just the variation in all those different ceramics have just been absolutely amazing.
When you pull a piece of ceramic out of the ground and you see the paint on it, or, a feature like that fingerprint, you guys are old hats at this, but even still, do you get that excitement where you're shouting and you're happy and the whole team comes over to look?
Yes. Yes, I think that's what makes, anyone good at whatever job they have is having that passion for it. And we definitely have a passion for all of the materials, but especially the ceramics. And I think Kat's being a little bit modest here. I'd like her to talk about, she identified a couple of ceramics that had never been encountered at our mission at the Alamo ever before.
So the ceramic that we found was a Goliadware, but what's really cool about it is that it's a polychrome, so it has multiple colors on it. So there's a red paint around the rim, and then there's this like kind of black squiggly line. And the black squiggly line is made from a material called asphaltum, which is native to southeast Texas, kind of along the coastal region. And that shows evidence of, trade networks or people coming here and bringing that style of ceramic to the Alamo. So that is really quite amazing. And as I've scanned the literature before, we really haven't seen that type here from archaeological excavations.
When we have the historians on the podcast, they talk about how learning new things adds to the historical narrative. And that's what ceramics like this are doing. You're learning more about who came in to the Alamo as a mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Another really amazing ceramic type, we only have one sherd, is one that we're pretty sure is Caddo influenced.
Oh, yes. So this one is really interesting. The manufacturer type is of like a Spanish colonial ceramic. So we see wheel serrations that was made with a wheel. However, the design on it has punctations, which are essentially just people getting their fingernail and digging into the clay. And it's kind of around the rim of the vessel.
It looks like a half moon.
Yes, like a half moon. And that style is very specific to Caddo style ceramic. And that's really interesting. So they integrated this manufacturer style of Spanish colonial, but used Caddo inspired design.
So a blending of cultures.
Yes.
How cool. Okay, this episode is titled Inside the Archaeology Lab. And after a year and a half in the field at the Long Barrack, you're going to be spending a lot of time inside the lab. So what's next in the lab?
Right now, we just finished all the bagging and tagging of all the artifacts. So right now, I'm cataloging every single artifact that we've found. And that is done by hand. Like what Tiffany said earlier, it's very meticulous, counting, weighing, and identifying. And then next, we have our analysis, which is something Tiffany and I both are looking forward to.
What is analysis?
So the cataloging portion that Kat was describing, think of it like an inventory. So we're taking stock of every single artifact and just getting basic information. The analysis is when we're going to take out each artifact type. So it's broken down into like super classes. So for example, all of the ceramics. So we pull out all of the ceramics and we do a more detailed analysis where we're going to look at the paste. So exactly how was that ceramic made? What material was made? What kind of temper was mixed into the clay to create that pottery? We take measurements, we look at the style. After we do that, we begin to compare the data that we've gathered across the project area. So you're looking at in which of our units or which portions of the project area had the most Spanish colonial, had the most indigenous ceramics. And then you begin to look for patterns and begin interpreting those patterns. And that's what's going to tell us what that area of the courtyard was being used for, or what kind of activities may have occurred.
Eventually, you're going to write a report on this, and that sounds very intimidating to me. How do you take 250,000 artifacts and make one cohesive report out of it, but that is what you two do.
That's a good question. It's going to take a lot of time. Writing reports like this, they take time. The analysis takes time. Every day we spent in the field, you multiply that by 3, and that's how much time we have in the lab and in the office doing analysis and writing the report. So it's going to be a long process, and you want it to be because you want to constantly review that data and pick up anything you may have missed.
Kat, as a lab supervisor, tell us about that lab work. What's your favorite part or something that people would find surprising about it?
Lab work is, to me, one of the best parts, just because once everything gets into the lab from the field, it's all dirty, right? So we have to wash it. And once it's washed, we have to sort it by, like what Tiffany said, into general artifact types. One of my favorite parts about the lab is when I'm sorting or even doing the catalog or the inventory of the artifacts is connecting, okay, so this object came from this specific stratigraphy or this level in an excavation unit. And that is what's really fun is like, okay, so like for instance, for this project, they're in the battle deposit for this one. Wow, so this came out of this specific battle deposit. So making those connections and not necessarily seeing it just as an object, but making a connection to the archaeology. And that's one of my favorite parts.
So right now you have the jigsaw puzzle. You've taken everything out of the box. It's on the table, and now you've got to put it together.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All 250,000 artifacts you found at the Long Barrack, where do they go? What happens to them?
Once we have finished all of the components of this project, then all of our artifacts will be permanently curated according to the standards set forth by the Texas Historical Commission. And they will be stored in a certified facility, and hopefully that facility will be here at the Alamo. We are undergoing the certification process so that all of those objects remain in a collection here at the Alamo, and we're able to access them for research or even display. Remember, I said not all of the artifacts were quality, museum quality, but some of them are. And hopefully they can get their time to shine in either the upcoming visitor center and museum or even in temporary exhibits that we have in the future.
I'm glad you asked that because we post regular archaeology updates on social media. And a very common question we've been getting in the comments, will the artifacts you are finding go on display? And the answer is not at the moment, but likely some of them in the future.
Yes, definitely not all of them.
They have to tell the story in the rest of the visitor center and museum with all the other artifacts and interpretive panels. They have to fit in.
Exactly. And just because they're not on display, it doesn't mean they're not significant. Like I said, available for research, future research. There's so many different avenues we could pursue looking at whether it's the ceramics or the musket balls or the stone tools, what have you. All of the artifacts do tell a story. So it's important that we always have those available for research.
And that's what you're thinking about, the archaeology team 50 years from now, 100 years from now, 150 years from now, and so on, that if there's something they need to go back and look at, not only are all the artifacts here, but they have your reports and your records.
Absolutely. That's something that, now whenever we start a project, we've already done the research. We've looked at the archaeologists that came before us and I think this is important in any subdiscipline or any discipline, that you read the researchers that have done the work before you. And just because they might have had something wrong, it doesn't mean that they were bad at their job. It means that times change and we have better technologies now. We know more now than we did then. And that will be the same in the future. 50 years from now, someone's reading our reports and they're like, oh, wow, I can't believe they didn't do X, Y, and Z. Well, maybe it's because it hasn't been invented yet.
What's that feeling like, Kat, knowing that decades from now, centuries from now, someone's going to be looking at your report?
I mean, it feels kind of scary, but also kind of cool because, we read reports from the 1970s and we're just like, oh my gosh, what were they thinking? But in that time, that's what made sense. So they might think that about us, but right now we're working with the resources that we have and making sure that the quality, especially of our artifact analysis, would be good enough for someone to come be like, okay, I need to find this ceramic, and then they can go find it immediately and be like, okay, she was right.
Or if technology's changed, it could be, I see what they were doing. I follow the trail that they're leading me down. So later this month, your team is speaking at the Society for American Archaeology Conference, and that is the biggest archaeology conference of the year. Tell me about it.
So this is the premier archaeology conference pretty much in the world. There's several different archaeology societies. We were at the Society for Historical Archaeology conference in January. At this new conference, there's going to be archaeologists who may not specialize in historical archaeology, archaeology of Texas, but they have similar interests. There are certain techniques that are going to be the same or similar no matter where you are at in the world or what time period. So for example, ceramics is a very universal aspect of archaeology. You're going to find ceramics whether you're at the Alamo or you're in Belize or you're in Cambodia, you're going to find ceramics. It's interesting to meet with archaeologists that are studying ceramics in those other areas and look at, oh, well, they had a similar coiling technique or punctations that Kat was describing on that Caddo-influenced ceramic. You see those in other parts of the world at other time periods. And so it's nice to be able to learn from your peers. Just because they aren't studying historical archaeology at the Alamo doesn't mean we don't have something to learn from them, and vice versa. So it's really great to establish those relationships with archaeologists from all around the world.
I am excited about my paper topic, talking about locally manufactured ceramics here at the Alamo and other San Antonio missions.
Now, just because the Long Barrack excavation is complete doesn't necessarily mean you'll be in the lab the entire rest of the year. What other field work are you planning for 2025?
We are planning another very large project. So,
sensing a trend here.
Many of our listeners here probably are quite familiar with the upcoming conservation work on the Alamo Church. There's a lot of great work that is being done, led by other departments here at the Alamo. Pam Rosser and Conservation comes to mind. And in conjunction with the conservation, there's going to be some necessary archaeology. We will be doing excavations on the exterior of the church. We're going to be going around, starting on the north. We'll be on the north, east, and south sides, exterior only, doing excavations in support of all of that upcoming conservation work. It's a massive project. The archaeology alone is estimated to take 500 working days.
This is an area that has been excavated quite a bit over the years. So we want to manage expectations here about what you're going to find.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to find a lot of artifacts, but because there's been previous archaeological work, previous utility work, construction work, landscaping, these units will be probably a lot of mixed context, which means we're not having that clear, beautiful stratigraphy like we did at the Long Barrack project. And we will find artifacts, but I suspect it's going to be more modern artifacts. Not to say we won't find a lot of the early ceramics or lithics, but if we do, it's highly likely they'll be in mixed soils. So that doesn't really tell us too much archaeologically, but still very important.
People who were at the Alamo over spring break saw you begin this work, and you were very close to Convento Courtyard on that side of the church. So people were coming up to you, asking you a lot of questions, and you definitely welcome the questions, but there's some etiquette here. So if any of our listeners come to the Alamo and see you working in the field, what do they need to know about talking to you while you do this work?
While they come and talk to us, we are actually working. We're doing our job, which is the excavations, the note-taking, and the screening. So
one thing to remember is that it's very hot and we are doing very physical work. Keep that in mind. If we look like we are very hot and tired, we are, and that might not be the best time to ask us a question.
So maybe a better approach would be to watch for the Alamo's social media updates, because Tiffany, you do send the communications team your updates every week, and Kat writes some of them as well, as I've seen, where you post about what you've been working on and any artifacts you have found that week.
Oh, absolutely. Weekly updates are important, I think, for everyone to see what we're doing. And we also will have 2 printed signs that are going to follow us. Wherever we're excavating, we'll have one of those signs nearby, and there's going to be a QR code that will take you straight to the website.
Dr. Tiffany Lindley and Kat Jenkins, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
thank you.
Be sure to check out the podcast notes. We are linking to the Alamo's regular archaeology updates so you can follow along at home. Those updates include some of the specific ceramics that Tiffany and Kat discussed in this episode. We've also linked to a video the Alamo produced last fall where we got to go inside the archaeology lab and see how all the artifacts are cleaned. You've been listening to Stories Bigger Than Texas, the Alamo Podcast.